Well, indeed, let's get to our first topic of a discussion today on the show. That's talking crude oil theft and its impact on the economy. Well, recently, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo said oil theft and losses pose a serious threat to Nigeria's economy and impact negatively on the nation's revenue generation. The Vice President spoke at a one-day stakeholders conference on oil theft and losses in Nigeria with the theme Protecting Petroleum Industry Assets for Improved Economy, organized by the Special Investigative Panel on Oil Theft Losses in Nigeria in Abuja. According to the Vice President, crude oil theft, if left unchecked, would spell doom for Nigeria and could fuel a public finance crisis in the nation's economy. Let's analyze the implication of crude oil theft in the economy and, of course, how it affects economic development. A senior research and policy analyst at BudgIT, Mr. Enebi Opaluwa, is on our show today. It's also his first time on the show. Thank you so much for joining us this holiday episode of the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Tolu.
Yeah, let's start with this worrisome figures. I know we've had lots and lots of figures, and you will do better in letting us understand some of them. But in very recent times, the reps have come to shout for a $2.4 billion crude oil theft, threatening to even summon the finance minister and the attorney general of the federation. What is your reaction to this? 48 million barrels of crude, that's what we're talking about here. Crude oil theft. What does this mean for a country like Nigeria?
Okay, well, let me first start. You said there are a lot of numbers, and depending on who you listen to, a lot of
Honestly,
analysts.
a lot of numbers.
A lot of numbers.
The AT has figures.
Yes.
OPEC.
So it would be interesting if the authorities could release definite numbers. That would really help streamline the debate in a much more focused direction.
True.
But what is the implication of crude oil theft for the economy? First of all, we all know that the country's main foreign exchange is oil and gas. The fourth quarter of 2022, I think 77% of revenue was from oil. Yes. Another 11% from gas. So we are looking at about close to 88%, 9% from oil and gas generally in terms of exports. So that's where the majority of our foreign exchange comes from. And then when you talk about revenue, government revenue, federal government revenue, it's a lot more than non-oil revenue. If you check historically, when you see comparison between oil revenue and non-oil revenue, oil revenue always outplaces non-oil revenue because it's the major source of income. Any year you find that non-oil revenue outpaces oil revenues because there is a problem. For example, during the COVID years or during the oil recession years in 2016 and 2008, wherever that year you understand that oil revenue was more than non-oil revenue. So it's a given. We depend largely on oil revenue, and that's why it's so crucial for Nigeria. Recently, the problem has been a lot more, let's say, intense. From 2020, Nigeria just started declining in terms of production. Post-COVID, we did not recover. At
the time, we're almost less than 1 million barrels per day.
So in August and September 2022, we produced about 940 and 970 million barrels per day. That was the average for that month, and that was atrocious. The last time, annual average for 2022 was about 1.14 trillion. The last time that happened was in 1970, where the annual average of oil production was about 1.08 million barrels per day. That is looking at historical data from the NBS. Yes. So you can see that the situation has deteriorated to a very, very precarious level. We cannot continue that way. When revenue dwindles, deficit increases, borrowing increases, and then you begin to have problems with meeting your budgets. Budget inflation becomes a problem. You have serious challenges with meeting your FAC allocation. State governments get less revenue from the government, and then specifically oil and gas producing states receive less revenue as well. 13% derivation reduces. If you look at the distribution of revenue for subnational governments, the Niger Delta states depend largely on the 30% derivation. At least about 80% of the FAC allocations of 3 states, Bayelsa, Akwa Ibom, and Delta State, at least 80% of their revenue comes from 30% derivation. Yeah. If you take that out of their FAC allocations, they are in serious trouble. And then, broadly, the federal government will have challenges in sending revenue to all the states in the country. Most states rely, at least 32 states depend on the federal government for about 50% of their revenue.
Allocation.
Yeah, and then another, I think half of the states depend on federal government for about 70%. So you see a lot of challenges with revenue. If oil goes away, if revenue from oil goes away, you can see why the Vice President was saying that it will be doomed for the country. The dependence on oil revenue is intense. Yeah, in recent years, non-oil revenue has been increasing gradually, but when you compare it to oil revenue, oil is still the major source of revenue for the country. Now, like I said earlier, with dwindling oil revenues, you have more debt, you borrow more, and Nigeria's debt profile has been of concern lately. Last year, the World Bank and IMF came out to raise concern regarding our affinity for borrowing. All right, in the first quarter of 2022, the debt servicing was more than oil revenue. Overall, debt to revenue ratio for last year is about 80%, meaning that if you compare the amount of debt service to revenue ratio is 80% of revenue. So what is left for development? What is left for capital projects? What is left? Even salaries become difficult. And when you look at the federal government's spending pattern, right, we borrowed about 6 trillion naira last year between January and November last year, and only 1.8 trillion was spent on capital projects. That is 30%. The remaining equivalent of 70% went to recurrent expenditures, paying salaries, and that is not a sustainable way to run an economy. Yeah. That is a very, very precarious position to be in. So we cannot acquiesce on our authority as a country to secure our most valued asset, which is oil and gas production. It's very crucial to the sustenance of our economy as a country.
Interesting way to start this conversation, and I would like to say that who are those involved in this? Yes, I know that question is very...
that is...
but the thing is, not just anyone can go dig a pipeline, rupture a pipeline, get crude oil. What do you want to use it for?
Yeah, you are very correct.
So it seems like there is this connivance somewhere. So, but let's tell ourselves the truth.
Okay, so oil theft is a very, very technical process, all right? It requires...
Professionals handle this.
It requires resources, financial resources, technical resources, technical know-how. In order to puncture a pipeline without damage, without accident, you need to be technically knowledgeable to do that. And you need to have deep understanding of how the pipeline process works and how the crude oil flows in the pipeline. There are sensors and there are pressure points. You cannot do certain things at certain pumping pressures. So you have to have understanding of how that operates. So definitely people who engage in these nefarious activities have deep networks, both within and outside the country, because for example, part of the, I think, the reports from the National Security Advisor sometime this year said about 83 oil tankers were arrested between 2018 and 2022. 83 oil tankers. Now, these people are not shipping oil to other parts of the country. They are shipping them outside the country. So definitely they have networks that are outside the shores of Nigeria, meaning they have probably buyers or facilitators. One way or the other, these networks transcend the shores of Nigeria. We have indigenous local beneficiaries, and we have external beneficiaries of this problem. And so we need to address that. As for who, I can sit down here and tell you who. That is the prerogative of the government. And I wouldn't want to say nothing is being done because investigations are ongoing. Like the National Security Advisor said, they've arrested they arrested oil tankers. The report did not say if individuals were identified, but oil tankers, and that was just part of the small operation. I'm sure we are all aware of the 4-kilometer stretch of oil pipeline line, illegal oil pipeline that was attached to the main pipeline at Escravos. This is 4 kilometers. In order for you to install a 4-kilometer stretch, you need investments, you need money. This is not a child's play. The people involved have deep pockets and they have deep networks. And so we cannot take it with kids' gloves. Yeah. It is our bread and butter as a country. Our future depends on it. The implications are enormous. If this continues, we have difficulty in sustaining our national sovereign wealth funds, our excess crude accounts. Institutions like the NDDC that depend on proceeds from the oil and gas sector cannot carry out interventions. We have people like the NCDBNB that carries out content development to promote indigenous research. It creates more problems for people like that to operate when revenue that they use to operate is streamlined. And we have
because I think there's a percentage that's supposed to get
3%,
from all of those
1% of oil license of profits.
Yes.
Different, and these are just some examples. There are other structures, frameworks, interventions across the country that depend on oil and gas revenue. And this is just pressing for now. We have a much more serious challenge because we have to arrest this now. There is a clock on oil and gas in the world. Energy transition. So we cannot continue to play.
We're going to talk about that because I was thinking that with all of this, we are still getting new oil blocks, still trying to locate some new locations where we'll drill oil, like the Nasarawa oil field and all of that has been highly celebrated. And we are talking transition on the other hand. How prepared are we for transition?
How prepared are we? Let's say we are trying to get off the ground. That is in my best opinion. But I wouldn't say we should stop oil and gas exploration. The thing is this, like I said, there's a clock on oil and gas.
Yes.
So initially, there's what we call fundamentals of oil and gas production, which is ownership, which is one. You have to define who owns. And in Nigeria, that is clearly defined. The Nigerians own oil and gas resources, but it's managed by the federal government on behalf of Nigerians. That's what the constitution says. That's the policy for oil and gas. Secondly, you have to decide whether you are going to produce now or in the future, depending on market fundamentals. If you believe the price will be favorable in the future, you decide to hold your assets now, and then you wait. When the price is much more higher, you produce. If you believe the price is higher now and will fall in the future, you produce now, and then you maximize the benefits now. That's the interplay between when to produce. Now, the way it is, in the coming decades, oil will become less relevant. So it is practical that you produce now. In 2014,
as much as you can.
Yes, in 2014, for example, the United States removed all embargoes to oil and gas exports. Prior to that, they were not exporting oil. They had oil reserves, but they were not exporting. But perhaps they had seen the handwriting on the wall that, okay, this is not going to last for long. And then the Obama administration removed embargoes for oil exports. And now they are rivaling Saudi Arabia in terms of the largest producers of oil globally. That is the United States. So obviously, it is clear you have to take advantage of your oil assets today, because in the future, it will not be relevant. So the federal government trying to prioritize production of oil so that they can get the benefits now, it's good, but it's not just selling oil and getting the money. You have to invest it for future, because part of the concepts of oil production, sustainable oil production, means you have to ensure the assets or the benefits outlast the current generation to future generations, and that's the purpose of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. As of, I think the last time we heard, it's around $4 billion, if I am right, in terms of assets, which is still quite, if you compare to other countries. Yes. So we need to do more. We need to maximize our assets now, and we need to ensure that we get the best benefits. However, we must do it very well. One problem with crude oil is that it promotes environmental pollution. People who do this, their oil spills,
honestly.
And then there is a chain. It's like a river. You vandalize oil pipelines, you steal crude oil, and then you sell it, at least for locally. Perhaps that is where illegal oil refiners get their source. I cannot confirm that now, but it's a possibility that that's where they get the source of their oil from. And so it's a chain. So if you want to disrupt the entire system, you either cut off the river at some point so that the flow is disrupted, and then you can disrupt the let's say
let's stay with refining and now local refining. We've heard a lot about the modular refineries, and we all talk about and say if we have them, we could, start to address this issue of non-refining in the country. But my question really would be, do you think that this people we call, in quotes, local refiners, is there any way we can integrate them? Is there any way something can be done?
Okay, I think it's a possibility. These people are not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere in time soon. So
they keep burning and burning.
So perhaps it could be a strategy to reduce the level of pollution. Yes, we know that sometimes oil pipelines are damaged due to negligence by oil and gas companies, but there are many incidences where it is as a result of vandalization by local syndicate groups. That is why this pollution occurs. So in order to curb these activities, perhaps we could look at that direction. But the thing is that if you look at illegal oil refiners, there are a lot of, to bring them on board might be difficult. The oil and gas investments are not cheap. You have to ensure that you have a lot of, they have capital. And so these illegal refiners have a lot of costs that they avoid. if you are extracting oil in Nigeria, if it's onshore, you are spending $15 per barrel for cost of production. If it's offshore, you are doing around $30 per barrel for cost of production. And so these people avoid that. Basically, if you are not buying from the official term, you are not paying that.
And that's coming free.
Exactly. And then in addition to that, we cannot regulate the quality of refined petroleum that comes from their refineries. If that is released into the system, it might damage vehicles, it might damage. So there are a lot of issues around illegal oil refineries that need to be tackled. Bringing them on board will solve some of these issues because they have to be regulated. They have to meet certain minimum standards.
True.
But the technicalities of doing that might be difficult. You have to convince them that it's better to pay the cost of production than getting illegal crude. So it's worth exploring. But like I said, there are some hurdles that need to be. It's not, you can't just say stop refining and they'll stop. You arrest them, there are several others that may replace them.
Yeah.
You arrest them, you don't know how long they stay in custody, if you get what I mean. So there are a lot of challenges that need to be addressed regarding illegal oil refineries. It's a good way to bring them on board, but you see, it requires a modular refinery is cheaper than a conventional refinery, but it is not cheap. It's not that cheap.
Yeah.
Yes. It
requires
capital
always
investment.
capital intensive.
Yes. And there are standards and regulations that whoever is involved in that must adhere to for safety and security reasons.
Which some of them will not want to do, so they'll try to cut corners.
Yes, to cut costs.
And all of that. Yeah. Well, let's talk about OPEC, what's playing out around our position in OPEC. We are still yet to meet our quota, clearly, after all of the efforts, and even with the new basin that we are trying to, we are still yet to meet up. What do you think around that? It's going to be a 2-in-1 question, so that we wrap up on that note. And also, are you one of those that believe that refinery, that Dangote refinery, will be the solution to some of our problems?
Okay. OPEC, I think Nigeria's quota is 1.8 million.
Yes.
Yes. And last year we did an average 1.1 million barrels per day. And our highest production was 1.25 million barrels per day, which is nowhere near 1.8 million barrels per day. We lost, on average, over 600,000 barrels per day, translating to probably $60 million per day, 21.9 billion in terms of value of that production.
I told you know the figures better than me.
So definitely we need to keeping up with OPEC quota is not OPEC's problem. If we do our homework right, if we handle things properly, we would meet our quota. In 2019, we were doing 2 million barrels per day comfortably. From 1973-75, we had hit 2 million barrels per day. All right. So from the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, we were doing 2 million barrels per day. 2 million, 1.9. So it's not as if it has not been done before. We can hit our quota, but we need to be serious as a country. Security and safety is paramount. And it's not just in the oil and gas sector. If there is no peace and security in any sector, you won't be able to maximize the benefits of that business. So we need to just get our acts right and take this seriously. Meeting OPEC's quota it shouldn't be a problem for us. If we are serious, we can do it.
That refinery?
Yes, okay, the Dangote refinery. So it's a 650,000 barrel per day refinery.
They will still buy crude.
Yes, he will still buy crude. Yeah, but you see, the refinery's pipeline is offshore.
Okay.
So the refinery might avoid some of the issues with vandalization along. Yes, so it's offshore. Yeah, so that is a plus for the refinery. In terms of its refined products, a lot of people are saying that when the refinery comes up, it will solve. We had a fuel scarcity issue recently, and it will stop fuel scarcity. Yeah, the capacity of the refinery might at best do some 35 to 40 million liters of petrol after refining. The equivalent of petrol that can come out of the refinery, if it allocates its full capacity to Nigerian market, would be do 35 to 40 million liters per day on a good day. Our consumption today is 65 million liters, at least according to the NMDPRA. So it's not enough for our domestic demand. We need to supplement that. Thankfully, the federal government is working on the Port Harcourt refinery. And hopefully, if what we hear is true, it should come online sometime this year. Hopefully soon enough to mitigate any challenges from the removal of subsidy. All right. But even with the Port Harcourt refinery, it will add another let's say, at least the first part of the particular refinery will add like 4 million liters of petrol. That is just the first part. The other, the second part of the refinery might add another maybe 6 to 8 million liters of petrol every day. So with the Port Harcourt refinery and the Harcourt refinery, we're looking at between, let's say, 45 thereabout million liters. But we still have another 10 to 15
to meet up with.
Yeah, meet up with. But it's a good start. It's a good start. The challenge now will be trying to meet up with those that supply before. If I go into that, we might start another discussion subsidy. But it's a good start. It's a good start, and I just hope they come online very soon. And we have 2 other refineries that can come online. The Kaduna refinery, yes, and what's the third? Delta State also? Yes, that can come online before that, and that will help. If all our refineries are working, then I think we can do a good supply for Nigeria's domestic market, and then encourage other local refiners to come on board, make the environment conducive. It's not the business of investors to make the environment conducive. That is the job of government. You handle security, you handle infrastructure, you handle standardizations, you handle things like that, so that when the businessman comes, he can do his best to maximize profit, and then you get your revenue back from taxes. All right. So the government has a lot to play in ensuring that the environment is safe and conducive for business to thrive. It's not just in Nigeria Delta. We have issues in other security sectors. There are kidnappings, there are vandals, looters, tourism across the country. So kidnappers, we need to address security holistically as a country so that we can attract the right investment that can spur oil and gas sector as well as other sectors. I
must thank you so much, Mr. Enebi Opaluwa. He's a senior research and policy analyst with BudgIT Nigeria. Thank you so much. It's really good to have you on the show. And a happy Ramadan and, of course, Eid al-Fitr celebration.
Same to you too. Thank you very much.